here is the deal. Most people, if you go on Facebook or social media things, because that's where you get all the knowledge out there. No sarcasm intended. Oh, wait, no, lots of sarcasm intended. People will say how horrible it is to, put young horses in training, that we should wait till they're skeletally mature. I had to laugh when Justify won the Triple Crown, because he was a horse that hadn't raced as a 2-year-old. And so you had all these people that were saying, see, look at you guys, you bad people, because you're racing horses at 2-year-olds. You go ahead and you wait until they're a 3-year-old, and then they can win the Triple Crown. So these people are bad at math, because there was the Apollo's curse, which stated that a horse had not won the Kentucky Derby. So I think it was like 1880 something or whatever. So yeah, that just tells you that if you want to win the Kentucky Derby, having raced as a 2-year-old is really helpful. Every once in a while, you can find a freak. Justify qualifies as a freak. I loved him. I thought he'd win the Derby. Thought he was capable of winning the Triple Crown. He did great. Now, the next part to the story is he was retired from racing after winning the Belmont, and that makes sense. Now, the connection said that he had an injury. Maybe he did. If he did, that would back up the fact that if you haven't raced as a 2-year-old, you are more inclined to have injuries later on in life. Or maybe they just realized you have nothing to gain by racing this horse ever again. You are an undefeated Triple Crown winner. There is nothing you can do to improve your record. All you can do is tarnish your record. Retire him, and retire him quickly. They did the right thing. So I don't know whether he had an injury or not, but if he did, it backs up the idea. So along this lines, there was a number of epidemiological studies that have been done looking at the age of horse when they enter training. And these are fairly old studies right now. And my understanding is that at least the first one or two were even sponsored by like animal rights organizations that were hoping to show that racing 2-year-olds is a bad thing. But the results came back opposite of what they expected, and horses that didn't start training until they were older had greater injury rates. And the thing is it makes sense. What we have is bone modeling versus remodeling. And so we've talked about the term bone remodeling, but to put it in perspective, I like to compare it to potholes in a road, cracks and stuff in a road. With bone remodeling, you remove that damaged asphalt and then put in new asphalt. So you've not made the bone or the road any stronger or any bigger. You've just taken out older damaged mineral, if it was bone, and put in new mineral. Take out older damaged asphalt, put in new. That occurs throughout the animal's life. Bone modeling nobody talks about, but it is way more important, and only people who are really into bone talk bone modeling. And the idea there is bone modeling pretty much only occurs when that animal is young and growing. So it occurs during long bone growth. It is where you build the bone and allow it to take its adult form. Only when bone modeling is occurring can you make it stronger and bigger. Once you've had long bone growth stop, game's over. And the comparison that we like to use is when you're building a road. When you're building it, you can build it a small 2-lane country road, or you can build it a big super highway 8 lanes. And when you're building it, that's the time you can do it. Once your road is built, it's really hard to go ahead and make this little 2-lane road a 6-lane highway. It's just the challenges are much better. And so the only time you can easily make bone stronger is when that animal is growing. And people don't want to hear that because they think it's horrible to start young horses. And a fun little thing as to where I believe, one of my grad students, she needed me to break a horse for her, so I did it this last September, and the horse was a yearling. So I'm breaking her yearling as it's, I don't even know if it was 18 months old. Now, didn't do a lot with it. Unfortunately, I'm not the world's biggest guy. I've looked, I'm not even the world's second biggest guy. This is why I like the racing industry. I feel kind of big. But the thing is I got to throw in humor for my own sake. The thing is if I thought it was bad, I wouldn't be doing it. And again, I'm a relatively small guy, 5'6", 5'7", so I can ride horses when they're smaller. If you're a normal-sized adult, you might not want to be doing this. And not doing tons with it, but there's nothing wrong with starting them young. And I actually want to go back to a 1973 article published in the Australian Vet Journal. And what they did is they looked at, I have to look around for this journal up in the sky. So if you see me gazing up, that's what I'm doing, is trying to read things that are up there. But they looked at whether horses, thoroughbreds, 2-year-olds, if they were put into training when their knees were open, knees were closed, or somewhere intermediate. They wanted to see lameness, injury rates, and things like that. And what they showed is that horses that started training when their knees were open, I'm making the numbers up, but I'm going to get you pretty much ballpark, 50-50 whether they developed any lamenesses. Ones that started training when their knees were closed or intermediate, about 70% of them experienced injuries. Now, they wanted to try and justify that. And in fact, I use this quote from their article when I'm giving some talks. I don't have the exact thing here, but they wanted to say potentially it was some nutritional factor that was causing these horses to close their knees earlier, which is why they were having more injuries. And they even stated that many of the horses that started racing when their knees were open raced 6 or more races without injuries, whereas many of the horses that started racing or started training when their knees were closed never actually got to race. But they wanted to blame it on some nutritional factor, that maybe it was something in the diet that was affecting it. And I always like to use this statement that you want the truth, you can't handle the truth. My computer did a really weird thing, and now I have 2 pictures of you on my screen when I hit it. I have no idea why. But the thing is I don't blame them. 1973, they didn't understand bone modeling. And they were believing what everybody believes, that it's bad to start a horse before its knees are closed. But their results, 1973, showed you start the horse when their knees are open and they stay more sound. Here we are, 2020, and I understand why. Because I understand bone modeling and the fact you have to go ahead and stimulate that skeleton while it still has the opportunity, while it's still malleable, while it can be changed. If you wait until that skeleton is mature, you can't do anything. Actually, a couple years ago, I bought a horse from a trainer I used to ride for in Texas. The horse was a 4-year-old. The plan was to race him up here in Michigan. Brought him up here 3 weeks later. The track closed up and not being able to do it. But my biggest concern was this horse was a 4-year-old and never really been in training, because I know that's not good for the horse. And it's weird because it's exactly opposite of what most people would believe. But everybody across the world that works in this area and actually does the science and doesn't just read opinions knows this to be the truth. And it's not only skeleton, but it's tendon and ligament. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what I know is that, well, I just have to play it safer with that horse. He lives on pasture. He will not enter a stall other than, at the track and things. And I'll listen to him. And if there's any potential injury, we back off on it a lot. So we do everything that's right for the horse to hopefully prevent those problems. But I would have much rather have had it where we had the horse in training as a young horse, because that's when you can make it that much stronger. The other thing that goes along with this whole story is just what I said, people all over the world. If you look at folks over in the United Kingdom, some of the people that are doing tendon ligament work, Roger Smith, Helen Birch, Alan Good, there's a number of these people that do it. They've all come to the conclusion, and they've been preaching this for over 20 years now, that the only time to make tendon and ligament stronger is when that animal is still growing. You get much past yearling stage, it's too late. And so if you do nothing, now the problem is what does training mean? And this is where it gets tricky. Is it, this many miles, is it this speed? Here's what we know is the worst thing you can do for your young horse is stick into a stall and not allow it to be out on pasture playing with the other horses. Even partial turnout is fine. And in fact, if you ask me how long, at least for bone, I can't attest to this for tendon, how long that horse needs to be out, I would say probably at least 5, maybe 6 seconds. Because when you turn a horse that's been stuck in a stall out, what's it going to do? It's going to run really fast. In 5 or 6 seconds, it's probably gone at least 50 yards, 70 yards. It has done everything you need to stimulate the tendon or the skeleton. How much does the tendon need? I don't know. We've not quantified that. I'm not a tendon guy. But they definitely have shown that, yeah, they need exercise when they're growing. Definitely a very safe way is allowing them to get it on their own, being out, being a horse. When we really try to baby these animals, we create more problems than we prevent.